Put your hand flat on the table in front of you. Go on, do it. Press down. Push hard until your fingers go a little white. Now, what is stopping your hand? I know. The table is stopping your hand. The table is solid. Your hand is solid. Two solid things cannot be in the same place. Everybody knows this. A child knows this. You knew this before you could talk. But I want you to sit with that answer for a second, because I'm going to tell you something a little strange. That answer, the one everybody knows, the one that feels so obvious you almost feel silly hearing the question, that answer is almost entirely wrong. And the real answer is one of the most beautiful things I know about nature. So let's take it apart. Slowly, one layer at a time. You push your hand on the table. You feel resistance. Where is that resistance coming from? Well, it's coming from where your skin meets the wood, the surface, the place where they touch. Except here is the first funny thing. Your hand is not touching the table. Not really. Not the way you think. Let me explain what I mean. Your hand is made of atoms. The table is made of atoms. And an atom, well, an atom is a peculiar object. In the very center there is a tiny lump called the nucleus, and around it, way out at a distance, there are electrons. Now I want you to understand just how empty this thing is, because the numbers are ridiculous. If I took the nucleus of an atom and blew it up to the size of, a pea, a little pea sitting on the floor in the middle of a great big stadium, then the nearest electron would be way up in the cheap seats, hundreds of feet away. And in between, nothing. Empty. No stuff at all. So an atom is basically empty space with a few specks in it. And you are made of these. Trillions upon trillions of them. Which means you, the thing reading this, the thing pressing its hand on the table, you are almost entirely nothing. If you could squeeze all the actual matter in your body together, all the nuclei, all the electrons, packed tight with the empty space taken out, the whole human race, every single person alive, would fit into a volume about the size of a sugar cube. Maybe smaller. Stop and feel how odd that is. You are a cloud, a puff of mostly empty space wearing a shirt. So if you're empty, and the table's empty, why don't you just slide right through it? Two ghosts should pass through each other. Why does the ghost called your hand get stopped cold by the ghost called the table? This is the real question. And now we get to the good part. The electrons, those specks out in the cheap seats. As your hand gets close to the table, the outer electrons of your atoms come near the outer electrons of the table's atoms. And electrons do not like each other. They carry a thing we call negative electric charge. And two negative charges push apart. Hard. The closer you bring them, the harder they shove back. Not a little harder. Enormously harder. This is the electric force. The electromagnetic force. And I want you to appreciate it, because it is fantastically, absurdly strong. People don't feel this in their bones, so let me try to put it in front of you. The force of gravity, the thing pinning you to the floor of the planet, the thing it took an entire Earth to produce, the whole weight of the world under your feet. The electric force is not a little stronger than gravity. It is stronger by a number so large I can barely write it for you in words. It is about a 1 followed by 36 zeros times stronger. 10 to the power of 36. Here, picture it this way. If the electric force between two specks were the height of a man, then gravity between those same two specks would be smaller than the width of a single atom. That's the ratio. Gravity, the great mover of planets, is a whisper. Electricity is a scream. So when you press your hand on the table, what you feel, that firm, cold, flat resistance, that is not wood touching skin. That is the electrons in your hand screaming at the electrons in the wood to back off, and the electrons in the wood screaming right back. You are feeling a force field. You have never once in your whole life touched anything. Not your dinner, not another person, not the ground. You have only ever felt the push of electric forces holding things a hair's breadth apart. When you shake a friend's hand, your atoms and their atoms come close, they repel, and the warmth and pressure you call a handshake is two armies of electrons refusing to merge. I find that wonderful. The most intimate thing, touch, and it turns out to be a polite standoff. All right. So that's the table. That's why you don't fall through the floor. Electric repulsion. Good, we solved it. Except we didn't. Because now I've got a worse problem, and it nearly broke physics for good. Go back to the atom. The little p in the stadium, the nucleus, sitting in the middle, it has a positive charge. And the electrons way out there, they have negative charge. And we just said opposite charges pull together, same as same charges push apart. So the nucleus is pulling on the electron, tugging it inward, always. So tell me, why doesn't the electron just fall in? Think about it. There's nothing out there in the cheap seats holding the electron up. No little shelf, no string. There's a positive nucleus yanking it inward with that ferocious electric force, the screaming force, the strongest thing around. The electron should spiral right down into the center, and the whole atom should slam shut like a trap. In about 100 millionth of a second, every atom in the universe should collapse into a tiny dense dot. You should not exist. The table should not exist. Nothing with size should exist at all. But here you are, with size, pressing on a table that also stubbornly has size. So something is holding the electron out there. Something is keeping the atom puffed up and roomy. What is it? And this is where the answer stops being a force at all. This is where nature does something I still find almost impossible to believe, even though I know it's true. The electron is not a little ball. Out there in the cheap seats, the electron is not a tiny marble orbiting like a planet around the sun. It is something blurrier than that, something more like a wave, or a smear, or a cloud of where it might be. And a wave needs room. You cannot squeeze a wave down into a single point any more than you can squeeze a sound into no space at all. Try to trap the electron in close to the nucleus. Try to pin it down to a tiny region, and it fights back, not with a force, with its very nature. The more you confine it, the more frantic and energetic it becomes, the harder it pushes to spread out. There is a kind of restlessness built into matter at the smallest scale. Confinement costs energy, and nature is cheap. So the electron settles at a distance where the inward pull of the nucleus and its own refusal to be pinned down balance out. And that distance, that balance point, that is the size of the atom. Read that again. The size of every atom in your body, the size of you, is set by a wave's refusal to be squeezed into nothing. There is no shelf holding the electron up. There is no string. There is only this restlessness, this need for room, and it is the reason matter takes up space at all. Without it, you'd be a dot. Now you might say, fine, one electron needs room. But your body has uncountable electrons packed in shoulder to shoulder. Why don't they all just pile into the coziest, lowest little spot together? Why don't they stack up like coins? And here nature plays its strangest card of all. It turns out electrons cannot share. There is a rule, an absolute rule, no exceptions ever found, that says no two electrons can be in exactly the same state, in the same place, at the same time. Each one demands its own spot, its own little room. If one electron has taken a state, every other electron is forbidden from it and must go find another and another, climbing up into more and more energetic, more spread out arrangements, simply because the cheap seats are full. We call this exclusion. And I want to be careful and honest with you, because it's tempting to call it a force. And it is not a force. Nobody is pushing. There's no field, no charge, no shove. It is a rule about what is allowed. Nature simply does not permit two of these particles to be in the same state. the way a law of arithmetic does not permit 2 and 2 to make 5. It's not that something stops it. It's that it isn't a thing that can happen. And from that one rule, that bookkeeping rule about who's allowed to sit where, comes the entire solidity of the world. Think about what happens when you try to crush something. Squeeze a rock. Compress it. To make it smaller, you have to push all those electrons closer together, into smaller rooms, fewer rooms. But the rooms are already taken. Exclusion won't allow it. To force the electrons closer, you'd have to kick them up into higher and higher energy states, and that takes tremendous effort, and they shove back with tremendous stubbornness. That stubbornness, that resistance to being packed down, is exactly why a rock is hard, why a table is firm, why your bones hold their shape, why a chair holds your weight. So go back to your hand on the table one more time, and look at everything that's really happening in that little firm push. The electrons in your skin and the electrons in the wood repel by the electric force. That's the first wall. And behind that, holding each atom open and roomy in the first place, is the restlessness of waves that won't be pinned. And behind that, stopping all those electrons from collapsing into one happy pile, is the exclusion rule. The law that says everyone needs their own room. 3 layers. A force, a restlessness, and a rule. And only when all 3 are working together do you get the simple, stupid, obvious fact that your hand cannot go through the table. There is nothing simple about it. There is nothing obvious about it. It is one of the deepest facts in all of physics, and you have been leaning on it, sitting on it, walking on it your whole life without a second thought. But I'm not done, because I've been talking about the electrons, the outer business, the cloud. I haven't told you about the P in the middle, the nucleus. And the nucleus has a secret that is, if anything, even more violent and more strange. Remember I said the nucleus is positive. Well, here's a thing I left out. The nucleus is not one lump. In most of your atoms, it's a little cluster of pieces, and some of those pieces are positively charged, jammed in right next to each other, packed unbelievably tight in that tiny central P. And we already know what positive charges do when you put them close together. They scream to get apart, with that monstrous electric force, times 1,000,000, because they are so very close. So the nucleus should explode. Instantly. Every nucleus, everywhere, should blow itself to pieces the moment it forms, flinging its positive parts apart at a frightful speed. Why doesn't it? Because down in there, at that incredibly tiny scale, there is another force. A different one. We don't feel it in everyday life, ever, because it only reaches across distances smaller than the nucleus itself. Step back even a hair, and it vanishes completely. But up close, inside that little P, it is the strongest thing in all of nature. We call it, with great imagination, the strong force. And its whole job, the thing it does, is to grab those positive pieces and hold them together against their own furious desire to fly apart. It is stronger than the electric repulsion, but only just, and only at that tiny range. It is a clenched fist holding a coiled spring. So now look at what you are. Truly look. Every atom in your body is a war. In the center, the strong force is locked in a death grip with the electric force, holding the nucleus together by a hair against a repulsion that wants to detonate it. Out in the cloud, the electric force is yanking the electrons inward while the restlessness of the waves holds them out, and the exclusion rule keeps them from piling up. Up and down your body, atoms link to other atoms by sharing electrons, by trading them, by gentle electric handshakes between molecules, building the long, beautiful chains that make a protein, a muscle, a strand of you. And every layer of it, every single layer, is a balance. A negotiated truce between forces that, left alone, would either collapse you to a dot or blow you to a cloud of dust. You are not a solid thing. You are a process, a standoff, a trembling, humming equilibrium between a force that wants to crush you and a rule that won't let it. And it has been holding, steady, every second of your life without you ever once having to think about it or thank it. Now let me put these forces in order, because I think the ranking tells a story all by itself. The strongest thing in your body is that strong force deep in the nucleus, but it can only reach across the width of the nucleus, so you never feel it directly. Next comes the electric force, the one doing almost all the visible work, holding your atoms together, holding your molecules together, giving you touch and texture and firmness and the whole feel of the physical world. It's the one you live inside. And then, dead last, almost comically weak, so feeble it took us a long time to even measure it between small objects, comes gravity. Gravity. The thing you'd have named first if I'd asked you what holds your body together. The thing that feels so powerful, so inescapable. And on the scale of an atom, it is nothing. A rumor. A joke. The pull of gravity between two electrons is so much weaker than the electric push that it might as well not exist. Gravity does absolutely nothing to hold you together. Not one of your atoms is bonded to its neighbor by gravity. If gravity switched off this instant, your body would not fall apart. It wouldn't even notice. So why does gravity feel so strong? Why does it rule your whole experience of weight and falling and effort? Because gravity has one trick the others don't. It only ever adds up. Electric forces, the strong ones, they come in plus and minus, push and pull, and in any normal chunk of matter the pluses and minuses almost perfectly cancel out. A table has just as much positive charge as negative, so from a step away its mighty electric forces hide, balanced, invisible. But gravity never cancels. Every speck of mass pulls every other speck the same way, always toward, never away. So when you pile up an entire planet, all that feeble gravity, adding and adding and adding, finally grows into something you can feel. The weakest force in nature wins on the largest scale, simply because it never quarrels with itself. So here is the strange division of labor. The force that holds you together, your atoms, your molecules, the firmness of your own hand, is the screaming electric force, mighty up close and hidden far away. And the only force that reaches out from your body to the floor, to the planet, to the stars, is the feeblest one of all, gravity, winning by sheer patience, because it never quarrels with itself. The same flesh, held by a scream on the inside and a whisper on the outside. I want to leave you with one last thought, and I want you to actually try it, not just hear it. Press your hand on the table again. Feel the firmness. In that one small push, 4 things are happening at once that you will never feel as separate. Electrons refusing to merge. Waves refusing to be pinned, which is the only reason your hand has any size at all. A rule that forbids those electrons from collapsing into a single shared point. And far below all of it, a strong force winning a fight by a whisker against a repulsion that would otherwise tear the center apart. You are held together by a truce. You are kept apart from the floor by a scream. You take up space because of a restlessness, and you stay solid because of a rule. And all of it, every layer, has been holding perfectly, silently, since the moment you were born. So the next time something feels solid under your hand, I want you to remember what it actually is. Not stuff meeting stuff. A conversation between forces, conducted in a language older than the planet, in a place far too small to see. Now I'm curious what you make of all this. So here's my question for you. If you have never truly touched anything in your entire life, only ever felt the push of forces holding you a hair away, then tell me, what do you think is really happening in the moment you hold someone's hand?